Thanks for tuning in or listening to Picture Lock, where we focus on film. Since the beginning of time, women have played a crucial role in moving society forward. Even in film, women have moved the art forward while not always receiving the same accolades as their male counterparts. March is Women's History Month, and to celebrate that, Picture Lock has assembled a diverse group of panelists for a live special focusing on women in cinema. How does the Bechdel test hold up in modern times? Are more women being placed in above-the-line positions? What is the future for women in cinema? The expert panel of guests behind me, along with our studio audience, hope to come to some conclusions on the subject matter. That's all ahead on Picture Lock. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to Picture Lock's Women in Cinema panel. Judging by the sold-out crowd, I'd say that this is obviously a topic that everyone is interested in. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to introduce our panelists first. To my left, we have Miss Kimberly Skyrme. Miss Skyrme has been a casting director for 23 years and has worked in all areas of media production, from Hollywood features to national and regional commercials, as well as independent films. Most recently, she completed Baltimore casting on the award-winning Netflix original series House of Cards, which I recently binged out on. These successes, coupled with her studies of acting and directing at American University, has developed her own unique style of casting that engages the two crafts to ensure stellar performances from the actors, which in turn allows the director's skills to further enhance compelling and engaging performances. It's Miss Kimberly Skyrme. Moving right along, Miss Tia Dae, captivating actress, soulful singer, songwriter. Tia Dae is a native Washingtonian. She has been featured in several independent films such as Thick, Chocolate City the series, and Anacostia. Thick will be premiering in Baltimore on April 17th. In the music world, Dae has just released her new hit single, Insomnia, in February with her album Dae Collections, expected to release in spring of 2014. Miss Erin Essenmacher. Erin Essenmacher serves as the Chief Programming Officer for the National Association of Corporate Directors. She's responsible for oversight and execution of more than 60 education programs and events a year. Essenmacher is also an award-winning writer, director, and producer with nearly 20 years of experience in writing, directing, research, outreach, and broadcast and non-broadcast production. She has written, directed, and produced films for PBS, the Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, the History Channel, and Court TV. Man, that's a lot of big hitters. She serves on the board of Gandhi Brigade and is president of the board of Women in Film and Video of Washington, D.C. Next, Miss Nell Minow. Nell Minow reviews movies for radio stations across the country and on MovieMom.com. Her books include The Movie Mom's Guide to Family Movies and 101 Must-See Movie Moments. Let's give a round of applause for our panel. All right, so I'm going to start with a softball question for the panel. As a panel, when you hear women in cinema, or the question, what is the state of women in film and television, what are some of the first things that come to your mind?
Being polite. Ladies being polite, nobody wants to go first. I actually think women are having a huge impact. We're just having a much smaller impact than men are, and I think our state of affairs in cinema is hopeful, and we're working hard.
Awesome.
When I think about women in cinema, I think about the earliest days of film when everyone was kind of making it up as they went along, and directors like Mabel Normand and Dorothy Arzner and Ida Lupino were making films. And then I think about where things are now, and I'm glad to hear you think it's going well, because I have to say that I looked up some statistics before I came, and it's pretty depressing. Of the top 100 films of 2013, we're talking about just a couple of months ago, only 15% of the protagonists were women. Only 29% of the major characters and only 30% of the speaking parts. That means a lot of women on the screen were just going like that. Only 13% of the movies in that top 100 featured an equal number of men and women. And this is what I call the Ocean's 11 / Smurfette syndrome, where you have, 11, even Julia Roberts isn't counted as one of the 11. You have, 11 guys and you've got one woman. Furthermore, the women characters that we do see are less likely to have specific goals other than maybe getting married or to be leaders. And when you're talking about minority women, you've got an even bigger problem. In 2013, you were more likely to find a female from another planet than a female who was Asian. Of the Directors Guild, only 13% are women. And in the Academy, the people that give out the Oscars, it's 94% white and 77% male. And then on screen, you might think to yourself, well, that's there aren't many women directors or directors of cinematography, but we certainly have a lot of big female movie stars, right? Well, not so much, because in that $20 million a film club, I bet you could tell me who the male stars are. Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, Will Smith. They're the $20 million a year guys. There really are no $20 million a year women, even though I will end with one positive note. Last year's Hunger Games, the top grossing film of the year, was the highest grossing film ever to have a female protagonist. She's 23, but it's something.
I think though, I'm glad that you mentioned the Hunger Games, because from my perspective, I come at this more from a documentary filmmaker perspective, and I think there are a lot of opportunities for women in independent cinema. That's really where I see a lot of the sort of hope in the room to grow. I was just at the South by Southwest Film Festival, and Lena Dunham spoke, and she was saying how the festival is so close to her heart because that's where she got her start as an actress in independent film at a film that premiered at South by Southwest. So I do think that there are opportunities, and I think that's why professional development organizations I think are so important, and other organizations that are supporting independent media makers. But to your point about the Hunger Games, it's true. It's great that we have this really strong female character, but I have to note that, and I tweeted about this when it came out because I was so upset, that when the MTV Movie Awards came out for nominations for Best Action Hero, Katniss Everdeen was nowhere to be seen, despite the fact that it was the top grossing movie. So I feel like we get this argument a lot that, well, you don't see more female leads because people won't pay to see it, but here you have a perfect example of something that people are paying big bucks to see, and the women are still getting snubbed. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah. Tia?
Well, and just my take on it, I think that for myself, being a newbie in a sense to film, when the diversity for women of my background. I don't come from a college educated background. This is just something that is a gift for me. Acting and just being an entertainer and artist is a gift. So a lot of the politics I'm learning because it's a part of business. But I do, like the role Thick that I was casted on, it's a very dominant role. It gives me more of the ability to take on a role and really show my talent. And that's a good thing, but again, piggybacking off what you said, it's more independent. Right now, I probably would not even be looked at a major casting, by a major casting director. And this is just me talking off of, I'm not represented by a casting director or a casting company because I do a lot of things on my own. So, I just keep plugging in at the independent background, and maybe one day, we'll make some greater moves. So,
and which just to speak again is that I didn't say that the statistics were great. I said I think it's great and it's hopeful because there is independent films and there is documentary filmmakers, and I too can quote all of those statistics. But if we get bogged down with negative statistics, we're actually keeping ourselves back. So it's important to look at the hopeful opportunities and be a documentary filmmaker, be an independent filmmaker, so that we actually do move it forward. We can sit and quote statistics all day long, and that's going to keep us in the back room. We need to be out front and making things happen.
Oh, I don't know. I don't agree with that. Of course, I'm a lawyer, so I think that's. So I have to tell you, I don't agree with that at all. I think, I don't want to say to women filmmakers, "Well, that's all right, honey. You can make an independent film. Go on Kickstarter." I want them to have exactly the same opportunities that the big male, the Steven Spielbergs have. And so I think it is very important to get those statistics out there, because that's pathetic to say.
I didn't say not get them out there. I said we can't focus on them.
But I think
because I, as an independent woman, actually just secured some money at the weekend, and I'm an independent person, and I will get my films out there. But if I focus as a filmmaker on those issues, then we're in a situation where I'm focusing on statistics and not doing work. And I want to tell stories, not quote statistics.
And I totally understand that, but ultimately you have got to humiliate people, and you've got to get those statistics out there to get them to understand what the issue is. That's just shocking to me in this day and age when women make up half of the ticket buyers, and women have done very, very well at the studios. There have been top production heads at the studios who have been women, and yet we still somehow cannot get major studio stories made that pass the Bechdel test. And I know we're going to talk about the Bechdel test, right?
All right, so
I was just going to say, I think that what I would say to that is I don't think that education and empowerment is a zero-sum game. I think they're both really important. I think it's important to educate people on sort of where we're at, because there's a message in there and there's a lot of learning for sort of where we need to go. But absolutely, at the same time, you can be empowering independent filmmakers, people that are working in Hollywood now, and doing what we can with the resources we can to sort of lift those people up and help them get to the next rung, basically.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, we're off to a great start here, right? I can feel this energy. So I'm a big fan of getting the bad news told to me first. So I do think there are so many achievements with women in film and television, and that's something that we're definitely going to get to. But I guess let's go ahead, because I do want to leave, let's leave feeling optimistic, right?
Oh, don't
Hopeful,
worry.
yeah.
Optimism.
So in 1985, Alison Bechdel had a comic strip called Dykes to Watch Out For. And in the strip called The Rule, an unnamed character says that she only watches a movie if it satisfies the following requirements. 1, it has to have at least 2 women in it. 2, who talk to one another. And 3, about something besides a man. So these are 3 simple requirements, right? But as Nell pointed out, there's the majority of films today still don't pass the Bechdel test. Now, this is 1985, and here we are in 2014. So I guess my question is, what does it say about cinema that this test weeds out the majority of major films that come out presently, and why does it matter?
Well, I think I'm a big fan of the Bechdel test, but it can be taken to extremes. Last year they said that Gravity didn't pass the Bechdel test. I think that we would all agree that Gravity was certainly a movie that showed a woman in a very strong role, and that we would be proud to have her as a role model. And Alfonso Cuarón, of course, said that the studio tried very, very hard to get him to switch that to a male role, and he stuck with it. So good for him, and good for Sandra Bullock, and good for Gravity. But as a rule, I think it is fair to say that the Bechdel test certainly is something to think about. And in fact, there is one of the Scandinavian countries is now making the filmmakers disclose whether the movie passes the Bechdel test or not, sort of like the MPAA rating system. And I think that's a delightful idea. But certainly, I am all in favor of romantic comedies. I love romantic comedies like anybody, and I think that books like Pride and Prejudice qualify as great literature under anybody's standard. On the other hand, it is nice to see a movie like Gravity where a woman is doing something other than talking about getting married and how cute her clothes are.
Anybody else thoughts on?
Well, I guess we're going to play a little peekaboo tonight. My thing is, I just like good movies. It really doesn't make a difference to me if it's just full of males, if it's full of females. I just like great acting, and I like for people to draw me into a story, and I be sold. That's just my personal take on it. Now, I don't really agree with men being paid more or being looked at as being, you know, if you have a woman that's in a dominant role or a woman that's delivering a role and she's just phenomenal, I think that she should be paid what she's worth. It shouldn't be a thing to where as though, oh, because Denzel Washington is Denzel Washington. I mean, the same thing goes for movies, goes in politics. It goes in government, unfortunately. So it's just a battle that we have to continue working at. You have to continue making great films. Today was, and I'm a little ashamed to say this, but today is my first day finding about the Bechdel test. So I spend a lot of time working. I'm working really, really hard as an artist. And sometimes I just don't have time to sit around and watch movies or to be able to be a on-side critic because I'm trying to be in the movies and make the movies. But I don't look at it as being a big issue. That's just my personal take on it. I think that, you know, great acting shouldn't be about men or women, and it should just be about great acting. So that's how I feel.
Well, and I think with the test, I feel as a woman and a woman in this business, it's my responsibility to not necessarily quote the statistics, because the statistics are there for people to read, but it's to empower women who do write, to actually put those characters in. And so, yes, we can use the Bechdel test, but if I'm not encouraging writers to write women in with directors and screenwriters when there's a man, and I suggest, have you thought about a woman? So I, on a day-to-day basis, am actually making a change so that we're in a situation where there is women there and women are being encouraged. So I feel as a woman, it's my responsibility to not educate about statistics, but in a very personal way, because those statistics don't affect the writer. Those statistics, when I'm talking to a writer, it's going to put them off. But when I say, have you thought about a woman over 35 instead of the 25-year-old? A film I'm working on right now, he wrote the screenplay with a 25-year-old woman in mind. And I said, well, really, let's think about it. I've introduced him now to a woman who is well into her 40s, totally recast what he was thinking about. So I'm on a day-to-day basis knocking down those statistics. So I think it's important to know about the Bechdel test, but putting into action, making it appear in a screenplay.
Can I just add one more thing? Like the movie Thick, again, it's premiering April the 17th out at the Landmark Harbor East. I have
Good
to
job.
plug it.
It shows. That's what women need to do more.
That's right.
But the lead role was actually written for a man. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the whole thing is we see so many roles with men playing the boss, the top guy, or the person that's doing the dirt. And the twist came in when the director, Anthony Green, and his assistant director, Cheryl Brown, said, well, let's put a twist and let's make it a woman who is running this organization, this crime organization, ordering hits on people and things like that. And it took me as an actress totally to another level, because people are used to seeing men in dominant roles like this, and being able to see a woman in a dominant role like that gives it a different edge, because it wasn't me being a sassy bad guy, but you know, it was me just delivering something that we're used to seeing men deliver, in a sense.
And let me say that Tia does an excellent job in this film. I remember when I first met Tia in the flesh, I had seen the movie first, and so I was kind of scared. Like, I was like, I don't know. I mean, she was that gangster. So, Erin, were you about to say something?
I was just going to say, I was thinking when you were referencing 1985, well, it's about 40 years ago, and I think, you know, this obviously could be a whole other panel, but, you know, those statistics bear out in lots of other things. Like when you look at women in STEM, professorships and tenure, those statistics haven't changed in 40 years. When you talk about, you know, sort of my other hat that I wear at NECD, where I work, you know, my day job, you know, those statistics have, you know, barely changed for women on boards. And what I think is interesting is when you look at the industry and the sort of part of the country that has the highest concentration of women on boards, it's the Midwest. And it's because that's where consumer products companies are based. And they're looking at who are our constituents. And they're largely women. And so people need to be able to see themselves. And I think to your point about, you know, a woman being a gangster, a woman being a superhero, I think that it really is a misconception that women aren't going to pay to see women in these strong roles, because guess what? Our lives are not talking about clothes and weddings all day. That's, I mean, and
Right.
so I think that when you see a film where you really see yourself and it resonates, I mean, this, to me, this is the power of documentary film, is to be able to show someone a story where they can see themselves. That's a powerful thing, and I think that's really what we're talking about.
Well, let's talk about the way that women are represented on screen. From a film critic's perspective, because I'm also a film critic as well as Nell, sometimes we call different stock characters or the stereotypes different things. And one is like manic pixie dream girl. And so for anybody that doesn't know what a manic pixie dream girls are, they're said to help their men without pursuing their own happiness. And such characters never grow up, thus their men never grow up. So if anyone saw Garden State and saw Natalie Portman in Garden State, that's an example of Manic Pixie Dream Girl. So I guess the question that I have for you as a panel is, do we actually see real women on screen, or are we seeing stereotypes? I know that there's some films, you know, and it seems a little bit as though it's few and far between where we see real women. But are we seeing more of a stereotype, or what, you know, a male that writes the film thinks that a woman should be? What is it that we're seeing?
I would say stereotype. I definitely feel like it is painted like women are supposed to be meek, humble, sexy, you know, kittens and or whatever. And women are not supposed to be in a role I just feel like the stereotypes are not leading us to really growing into a character. I take Scandal. I don't watch Scandal, but the stereotype of, I have friends who will not watch the show because they have this whole conception of she is this or she's that, and I don't, you know, go with this or that. But that's just a stereotype character. That's just my personal opinion.
I think the biggest stereotype problem, and I know you ladies will understand what I'm talking about here. My daughter is a costume designer in Hollywood, and she was recently working on a very, very big budget movie that will be coming out later this year. And the female lead in the movie in real life is 18. This is her first adult role, and her mom still comes with her to all the fittings and everything. And my daughter, who looks at a lot of beautiful actresses in her job, says, this young lady is absolutely stunning. She's 18, she's got a gorgeous figure, she looks like $1 million, but she walked into the producer's office with her mom, and the first thing the producer says is, with barely looking up, is lose 10 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, it was some years ago that Goldie Hawn said in the movie First Wives Club that when you're an actress in Hollywood, you have 3 stages: Babe, District Attorney, and Driving Miss Daisy. You think about the people that I mentioned, the actors I mentioned before, Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, they've been going along, you know, pretty Denzel Washington, they've been going along pretty well, and they keep, the girls that they're with keep getting younger and younger. I think that is a problem. As for the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, I totally understand that concept, and I share that concern, but I have to say, I would 1,000 times rather have the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, and I believe, by the way, that there is such a thing as a Manic Pixie Dream Boy, too. I think that very often the love relationships in movies are about one person being the life force for the other, and so you always have somebody whose life is kind of cramped and claustrophobic, whose heart is opened up by this other person, because that's what love is all about, right? We all experience it. It's just in a heightened way in the movie. And so sometimes it's a woman, sometimes it's a man, but you always have kind of a free spirit in the relationship. That's okay with me. I would much rather have that than the woman whose job in the movie is to say, honey, I know you're inventing the atom bomb, but I need you at home more. You know, you know, that's the part that I just never want to see again.
But I think if that story's good, particularly in this day and age, as women are working and men are working, I think if you're really watching the story and you are choosing not to have gender bias, you could see yourself. If you're a strong woman, you can see yourself in the man's role, and you may be with a man who actually is that person. So if the story is really paramount to it all, then we as people should identify and not be so gender specific. So I think either one of those, sometimes we need them because we're all of those things. At a certain point, we can all be that manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah, there are plenty of manic pixie dream boys too. But I just recently saw a play here in Washington, a George Bernard Shaw play that involved a brother and a sister. It was a fascinating, wonderful play. And I went home and I wanted to read the play and understand it better, and only then did I discover that George Bernard Shaw wrote it about two brothers. And they just had chosen to make it a brother and a sister. It was perfect. It was great.
I think one of the things that we kind of talked on, or someone touched on it just a second ago, that I wanted to bring up. The recent Academy Awards showed some of the ugliness of society, in which Kim Novak and Liza Minnelli were both ridiculed for their looks. It's pretty ironic because in the past, they were hot ticket sellers because of their looks. And so as you're saying, why is it that women aren't really allowed to act their age in Hollywood or age gracefully, whereas we have Liam Neeson and the whole Expendables crew that don't get any flack? But I don't know if Sylvester I guess he has some more movies in him, but so why is there that stigma, I guess, that women can't just age gracefully and kind of like, I don't want to say age out, but slowly kind of get.
Judi Dench is doing better at the box office now than she ever did when she was in her 30s and 40s. And Judi Dench and Meryl Streep really show you that all this money that people spend on Botox and plastic surgery, makes it impossible for them to actually move their faces, which many people think is important in acting. And the way that you see that Meryl Streep and Judi Dench take advantage of all of the age and experience they have and tell the stories with everything that they bring to it is just wonderful. I hope that will inspire more people, and if you haven't seen Philomena, I highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. Kimberly, what about you as a casting director?
Well, personally as a casting director, I abhor the LA scene of that we can only have those poor women who are 18 years old, and she's probably all of a size 2 and is told to lose weight. So
she's a 0.
I find it, appalling. Well, I even find it appalling the fact that we say 0, because really she's a size 6 if we went by normal sizes in 1985 when a lot of these statistics occur. Because who's a 0? I mean, nobody's a -0. Like we have some girth, so we can possibly be a -0. I think it's really unfortunate that we're in a situation where our society, because it's really not about this business, it's just society in general, I think, is not as willing to allow women to age gracefully and be who they are and proudly say how old you are. And if you're lucky and you have good genes and you're 10 years older than you look, well, good for you. But I think, just as people, we need to take care of ourselves. And I hate in Hollywood, and I feel bad for Kim Novak because it was so noticeable. But she felt the need, because she was who she was, to do that, to compete. And I think that women have to take ownership of growing old gracefully. Once you were the young one, and you looked fabulous, and you need to continue to feel fabulous at 40 and 50 and 60. And I think it has an effect on who you are. So I think it's about your person before anything else.
You think? Wait. Sorry. I agree that it is about the person, but I do feel as though there is a certain amount of pressure that actresses do have, and it's not necessarily put on them, but like Nell said, the director says, "Hey, you need to lose some more weight." Do you?
I'm just saying I don't like it. I don't agree with it. I think it's really unfortunate. British television and British film is certainly much more open to the various sizes and shapes of women, particularly if you watch, which I do watch a lot of British television, and I think there's a much better cross section of women that we see, and I don't appreciate in casting always finding the size 2. I like to find interesting people, the best person for the job, not the size 2 for the job. So those directors, I make them think outside the box and say, you don't pick the hot one, you pick the one who made the best choices.
Right.
But what you do is you bring the realism back into the picture of things, because everything is not about being thin. I'm 36 years old. People always mistake me for being in my late 20s or late teens sometimes. But you know, I've been this size all my life, and I think it is definitely we have to, as people, take care of ourselves, eat well. You have to have a self confidence about yourself that no one can break. It doesn't make a difference. Like you said, your time was here, your shine was there, but it's time to move on, because that's what life is about. It's about change. It's about growth. And if you are a great actor or actress, your career will not falter. It's no way that it could, because there will be roles that you can continue to grow in. I've played a 50-year-old, but they had to put so much makeup on me and things like that. But when I'm 50, hopefully I can really bring that role to life. I mean, I did when I played it, but you know, hopefully my acting skills and my resume and just my work in the industry will follow me, and people will look at that to say, hey, I want to use Tia Dae for this. I think she'd be perfect. Not because, Tia's not as pleasing as she used to be. She's not as thin as she used to be. So those are one of those stereotypes.
Well, it's back to the point that this mother should have actually said at the time that it's unacceptable.
Yes,
or,
absolutely.
You know, at a certain point as an actress and the mother of an 18-year-old should have said, why? Absolutely not. And you have to take a stand as a woman to say, why? Kate Winslet chooses to be the size she is, and she is, you know, public on the record about it. Like, this is my size, and I'm not going to starve myself to be a -2 to be in a movie. And I just think as viewers, and particularly that men like beautiful things. So there is that pressure that you've got a male producer. I can't imagine a female producer would have actually said that. She probably would have found a more polite way than to not put her head up and say lose 10 pounds. But, you know, perhaps we should do something to create a more healthy environment for you or something. So it's...
I think we have to be careful too not to denigrate men in the process. I know it's not what you're trying to do, but to me what I think we're talking about here is sort of like, and you can see this across industries, that are the big budget versus the independent. And again, I'm always going to be plugging independent media. So, and I agree with you, Nell. I mean, I think obviously I'd love us to get to a place where, you know, big name female actors are making as much as Denzel Washington or directing half the movies. But I think like anything that's disruptive, especially in the arts, it usually starts in an independent community. And I do think you have much more leeway with smaller budget films to say to the director, hey, have you considered a 45-year-old woman? I think the reality of life is it's not that easy to do that in sort of mainstream Hollywood, but the more that happens in independent film and the more that we support independent film, that's, you know, the fact that actresses have come up through independent film who are a different size, I think empowers women like Jennifer Love Hewitt or Kate Winslet to be able to say, no, this is who I am, because there's a groundswell around them that's supporting that. We do this thing through Women in Film Video called The Power of the Purse, and when a movie comes out that's got a female director or a strong female lead, we get a group of people together to go to the movies and put your money where your mouth is and to support that kind of media, because I think that's how things change. And I think it does, a lot of places start with the independents.
Well, I think women have to actually open their mouth, though, because actually on a big Hollywood film, on Hearts in Atlantis, said to the director, and that was not a small movie. I mean, Anthony Hopkins was in it, and they were casting a hooker, and they wanted somebody who was 25, and he said he would like her to have a good voice. And I said, well, I know an actress who has an amazing voice, but she's 50. And he said, okay, bring her in, I'll see her. She got the role, but I had to put my value and my voice on the line to say, you should think about somebody else. So I mean, women have to make the effort. You have to go up against what people say and go against it, which is why I think that mom should have said absolutely not, or that girl should have said absolutely not. I mean,
I'm sure you're familiar that in Hollywood, people are very intimidated. They want the job, and they don't want some other girl who is willing to do that to get the job.
But in the end of the day, you have to put, it goes back to even the money. You have to put the money where your mouth is. It's just taking a risk. I could have had him, I could have chose at, 32 years old and, you know, against a Hollywood director to not say it, but I knew my opinion was right.
But I think that when, just riding off of what Nell says, when people are hungry, they will compromise who they are when they're really hungry for something. And compromise can be good compromise, it can be bad compromise. You're absolutely right. I, at 18, would have said, what's wrong with me like this? Or can I just work out and tone up a bit? But, you know, some people are just, I don't want to say anything. I got the role. Let me just be quiet. So, you know, I'm sitting beside Kimberly. I don't want to say anything. Let me just be humble. So, you know, you have to what I do is I take myself out of myself and I try to put myself in other people's shoes to see how they may be feeling. She's like thinking to herself, well, I'll just lose the 10 pounds and we'll just get our foot in the door, and then we'll worry about things later. But people will compromise. They'll compromise their identity at some
Well,
risk.
let's switch gears real quick before we open it up to the audience. Recently, on a positive note, Frozen sold over 3 million DVD copies on its first day, and it's now the #1 selling kids DVD on Amazon of all time. And obviously, the significance of Frozen is that Jennifer Lee was a co-director on it. She also wrote the film, so that was huge for the writer to actually be asked to be a co-director. Obviously, in 2012, we had Brave, which was co-directed by Brenda Chapman. So what do you all think about Frozen and what kind of impact it might have on cinema now that we're seeing these women in these above-the-line positions?
Well, the nice thing about Frozen, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring it up. The great thing about Frozen is that it says such good things to little girls and boys about what girls do and how they think. And for Disney, spoiler alert, the handsome prince turns out to be the bad guy. And for Disney to subvert the usual fairy tale idea and the usual movie idea that you fall in love immediately and everybody's happy and that you don't have to do anything else with your life. And for the kiss of love to save the day, to be sister to sister, I think was just absolutely wonderful. So that's what happens when you bring women in to tell stories. You get stories that really are wonderful for women. And not that men can't write great stories about women. Of course they can, and women can write great stories about men. And Catherine Bigelow can direct an action picture as well as any man and all of that. But this is why you need to have a variety of people telling stories. And I think that Frozen's success, which was a shock to Disney, is really a testament to how hungry people are for stories like that.
And that's a perfect example to your point about the play you saw. It's based on a Hans Christian Andersen story that was a boy and a girl in those roles. And they changed it to be two sisters. So I think that's another example of, when you have a woman. I don't know the ins and outs of how that happened, but I can imagine it probably didn't hurt to have a woman as an assistant director.
Yeah. As I was preparing for the show, I was doing a lot of research, right? And it's interesting to me that there's so many great directors that we love and we celebrate who had female editors that edited either a majority of their films or some of the ones that we love so much. So I'm going to just read a couple of these. So D.W. Griffith, The Birth of a Nation, Intolerance, and Way Down East. Obviously, D.W. Griffith is kind of the father of the Hollywood, with all the different kinds of shots. Like, that's where we get our basic layout. But Rose Smith was his editor. John Ford, Dorothy Spencer edited Stagecoach, My Darling Clementine, What Price, Glory. Martin Scorsese, Thelma Schoonmaker, edited 23 films for him. Obviously, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street, Steven Spielberg, Verna Fields, Jaws. I mean, these are some legendary films. And obviously, I could keep listing all these different names. But they say that a film is made in 3 different places, right? So you have the script that you write, the film that you shoot, and then what's edited. So to me, I guess the question is, I guess I'm kind of blown away at the fact that so many of these films, it kind of ends with a female shaping or a woman shaping the way that the film looks. And these directors heavily depended on the editors and their counterparts to say, okay, keep this or don't. So what do you say, I guess, in when it comes to the success of these films? Actually, I guess in some ways that the women don't get as much credit as maybe they should deserve, because obviously when you edit a film, like, that's what we actually see and that's what we love. But do you guys have any thoughts on just some of the females and women that paved the way in terms of film?
Well, I would also add to that list Polly Platt and Peter Bogdanovich. None of his movies without her were as good as the ones that he made with her. And of course, Baz Luhrmann and his wife, who just got 2 more Oscars for the work on The Great Gatsby. I feel she's really the talented one in that family. So sure, there are a lot of good. There are a lot of good. Well, how many Oscars did he get for The Great Gatsby? There are a lot of talented, wonderful partnerships. I was fortunate enough to be in Martin Scorsese's office to meet with him once, and Thelma's office is 2 feet away, and he just was calling out to her every minute. It's just an incredible partnership, and so I think it is wonderful that that those women have made such great contributions. And speaking of casting directors, there's an excellent documentary I highly recommend to everyone called Casting By,
A friend of mine.
yeah, which shows the influence of women casting directors. And I also want to recommend this book by Ann Thompson, which just came out about Hollywood. It was really, really superb.
Well, I think your point actually speaks more importantly about collaboration, and that really is the cornerstone of the film business. And I think women are unique collaborators in storytelling, so it's no surprise that such a strong male would then like to have this soft counterpart to craft the story, so that it's a very nurturing skill, I think, to be an editor. And I have a friend who's written a film about Alice Guy Blaget, who is the first female filmmaker and actually came here from France, and she actually did employ a lot of female editors. So certainly in the early 1900s, a lot of women were editing, so it was a place where they actually
I'm
were
really
doing
excited about that film. I've been reading up about it, and that looks like an amazing story, because she I think will turn out to be as important to film history as D.W. Griffith.
Well, which fortunately she was inducted into through my friend who's the writer and her friends into the DGA, and actually Martin Scorsese actually did present the award to her.
Oh,
so we have some great things coming.
Awesome. All right, so last question before we turn it over to the audience. You all represent some facet of cinema, whether it's casting director, actress, filmmaker, film critic. How do you think, and I think Kimberly, you kind of touched on this earlier, how do you think that your personal career is actually helping pave the way for the future of women in cinema?
We could do a whole panel on that. I think that it's because I inspire people to over-deliver, and so I personally am getting people jobs. So I think for me, my career has been about the trajectory of other people, and it's not only actors necessarily, because I then, quite by accident, came into producing. So it was cultivating directors, cultivating costume designers, cultivating a lot of people. So I just am an energizer to other people's success. So I think that's really a sum total of my career. So it's moving it all forward.
Awesome.
And very specifically for women, though. I think it's very important. I try to take women under my wing and educate them. And then I will also say that if you too would like to help women in the cinema, that a big deal, because we've talked about the power of the purse, is opening weekend. And kind of historically, women don't go opening weekend, and men love to go opening weekend for whatever reason. So even if you can't go to the cinema opening weekend, you need to go online and you need to buy a ticket, because it's all about box office. So whether you're there or not, they don't count people in seats, they count people who buy tickets. So if you really want to support women in the business, buy the ticket on opening weekend, so the films will stay.
Nice. Tia?
Well, I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 2, single mom, 16 and 8-year-old, and again, this is a gift for me. So I'm sitting up here, I'm very blessed to be on a panel with such phenomenal women. I mean that. For me, it's just learning more and more, becoming more knowledgeable about my craft, because I didn't go and study somewhere to be an actress. I didn't read a book. This was just something that was given to me, and I love to deliver. I inspire people just with my spirit. I am always telling people, no matter how many times you get knocked on the chin, you have to find a way to get up. And I've been knocked on my chin a lot of times, but I just keep pushing. And I really believe that if I continue to push, my tenacity is going to allow me to evolve, where I am much more knowledgeable. I can sit on more panels. I can give information. I can maybe sit at a casting director's table one day, because I don't want to just be in front of the film. I want to learn everything behind the camera, because it's a business. So I want to be the best businesswoman that I can be. And I think being a single mom really drives me to doing that.
Yeah, I think, I think it's a couple things for me. I think I was raised by a single mom who it was a producer, so I kind of grew up in media and I watched her. But I think she really gave me a great example personally of, being able, stepping up and doing this job to show, I do this because I'm passionate about it, but showing that women can really be capable producers, directors, writers. I think it is being that voice in the mix that says, really, are we going to put her in that? What about this? Or we really want to say it that way? Maybe we should rewrite this line. And then I think, for the work that I do with women in film and video, to Kimberly's point about things like the power of the purse, and mentorship is so important. My fiance is here in the audience. He can attest to the fact that I am way overcommitted. But, it's very important to me to give my time to an organization like WIF, because I think mentorship and creating a community and creating opportunities for other people. I would not be where I am if it weren't for other people, women and men, but who said, hey, I believe in you. You can do this. You're ready to take the next step. And so I'm a big believer in karma, and I think it's really important, that whole mentorship and that sort of circle of creating opportunities for the next generation is really important. So that's what I feel like I bring to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. This has been a real pleasure to be on the panel with you ladies, and I think you're all wonderful. And none of you need to lose any weight at all. You look great. I have to bring everything I am to the movies that I look at, and I am a woman, and I'm a mom, and I have to filter through that sensibility. So as I respond to films, as I advise parents about what they might want to think about when they talk about films with their families, teenagers as well as children, I have to bring that to bear. I also am a big fan of independent film, and I love when I'm on the radio to tell the listeners that, yeah, there's a Schwarzenegger movie opening up this week, and which there really is, and there's a blockbuster with Russell Crowe, but there's also a little independent film that by Jim Jarmusch you really need to see. And for a movie, when Nicole Holofcener or somebody like that comes out with a movie, to be able, particularly when it's on DVD, to present it to people and urge it on people. And then I go on Kickstarter and I put in my money to support the films that look wonderful to me, and I'm so proud to have been a part of the Veronica Mars film and a bunch of others. So those are some of the things that I do.
Which actually, another thing about that, because they were talking about it, Tangerine organization actually does, it's called the Juice Fund, and they actually do fund women's projects. And much like Erin, I have also been on the Women in Film Board for a very long time, and I'm the chair of Women in Film and Television International. And we are hosting an international summit in Pittsburgh in May. And then Women in Film locally, because I'm the big promoter of everything, is actually having the International Short Film Showcase on the 31st of March at Busboys and Poets at 7 o'clock. So lots of things for women to do and give to support women.
One final thing I would say, I'm glad, Nell, you brought it up, going back to the karma thing for me at least, but one thing you can do to support women in cinema is go on Kickstarter when you get home, and I guarantee you there's tons of different media projects on there you can support. Find one that's directed by
Kickstarter and Indiegogo also.
Kickstarter, Indiegogo, there are a couple other crowdfunding sites. Find one that sounds interesting to you, like a movie you'd like to see, and give them $25. I mean, that's really the most powerful thing you can do probably right now.
Okay, well, let's open it up to the audience. If you have any questions, there's microphones on either side of the room. If you could just go speak into the mic and ask your question. In the meantime, while someone gets up, I guess, to go to the mic, who are some of your heroes? Or just, it doesn't have to be all five, your top five, but who are some of your heroes in film and television?
Good question.
On film and television?
For me, I'm definitely a words person, and so some of the women that have been screenwriters over the years, Ruth Gordon, Della Rogers St. John, and people like that. I love women, the movies written by women, including one called The Women. Yeah, which is a good one. The original, not the two remakes, okay?
All right, well, let's start here, ma'am.
Good evening. I just want to say thank you to the panelists. It's been a pleasure and great dialogue. I guess my question goes to Kimberly or Tia. How difficult is it to break, and we're not in Hollywood, LA, we're not in New York, how difficult is it to break in Washington?
Well,
I have a young daughter that's interested, so.
and I stay connected with all of the websites, Brian Dragonuk.
Sure.
I have submitted to Miss Kimberly before as well. But just staying plugged in, making sure that you have current headshots, making sure that your resume is up to date. If you have, your daughter hasn't done any films, just making sure that you can get her connected with the IMDb page once, if the film is connected with IMDb. Just making yourself relevant and continuing to keep yourself out there and audition.
Is there a lot of work in the Washington, D.C. area?
Well,
I've been
Or
here
do
for
they have to like, oh, you're good, but you got to go to New York? Or you
No,
have to
I've
go?
been here for 23 years, and it's a very passionate place for me to be, and I feel very fortunate in House of Cards that the first season they had 20 local speaking roles, and we had over 60 speaking roles in season 2. And it's because there is great people here, and there is work to be had. There's just not as much, so if you live in the state of Maryland, you need to write to your House representative to pass the tax incentive so House of Cards can come back again. So I think there is work here, and it's a very unique market. It's one of the largest theater markets, so you have a lot of opportunity to actually hone your craft. And to me, if you're going to be a great film actor, you need to be an exemplary stage actor as well. And you can take that to the stage, because in the end of the day, now with film and television, it's all about the extreme close-up. And if you don't have an amazing trained voice and just all of your skills honed, the majority of your work is actually in your eyes and your voice. So theater training is great for that. So I think there's great opportunity. There's independent films here, there's feature films that come through, there's government. I've worked with the Department of National Intelligence, and they've done short films. So I think there's a lot of great opportunities, and you have to have a really good career here before you can go to New York or LA. And here you can work, and you could go to LA and try to spend 10 years
Right, you can't work,
doing
sure.
it. Because there's, for every
makes
one
sense.
of your type here, there's 100,000 of them in Los
Good.
Angeles.
That's exciting. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Let's throw it across the room.
Okay, so we've been talking about women in film, and my question is more about women financing film. And I think there's a lot of power in being able to stroke a check. And I wanted to ask you about the possibility of how do you get a seat at the table when we're in an industry dominated by males, or even better, how do you find out if there are women angel investors? Because if we have the power to finance movies, we have the power to change a lot about the movies in terms of perceptions and stories that we can relate to. So how does that happen?
Well, I think Monda's point is great. So for all the ladies in the audience, I think you have to put your money where your mouth is too, and find women who are telling stories that you believe in, and find a way, even if it is only $10. If 100 people give $10, it's not only $10 anymore. So I think women need to put the money where their mouth is, and as filmmakers and creatives and artists, and no matter what kind of artist, you have to surround yourself with the people who are in finance in college. You may not do what they do, but they don't do what you do. And so they would love to collaborate with you and help tell your story. So I think you have to find people of like mind and find people to support you. And particularly women, I think it's important to find a female artist and support her, whatever that means, in whatever way it is, even if it's just going to the show or babysitting, because you need to go to rehearsal. So I think women need to support women, but finding that money there is grants that are specifically available to women. And I think you just need to ask everyone you know in a polite way. And all of a sudden, the money will come. I mean, I was at a meeting on Saturday, and I said, yes, we need 10 grand. Okay, 10 grand. I mean, that doesn't happen every day, but if you don't ask, they don't give. So you gotta ask.
closed mouth doesn't get fed.
I think the other important point I would say, talking about something like Kickstarter, and giving $25 to me, and I am an independent filmmaker. I have lots of friends who are independent filmmakers who've done Kickstarter campaigns, and I think the important thing to remember is, especially if you don't know that person, if you're just going on because you think this is a good story, really what you're giving them, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, even though it's going to sound a little cheesy, is hope. You're basically saying a stranger believes in me. My project is, I'm not just getting money from my friends and my family, and I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to who have gone through a successful campaign have said, these 50 people who have never even met me just gave me money. And I think that's how things start to change. I mean, my very first job was actually in politics. I worked for a PAC called Emily's List, and they started with this whole idea that it was like a chicken and egg thing, right? Like no one would support women early on in their candidacy because they didn't think they could win, and then they couldn't get any big money because they didn't have that seed money. And the idea was, behind Emily's List, was let's just get the ball rolling. Let's
That's what
give them
Emily
that seed
stands
money.
for, by the way.
Right, early money is like yeast.
It's not somebody's name.
That's right. And so I think that there are opportunities in this scenario as well. If you start to let women filmmakers know that you believe in them and you believe in their work, there's a real power in that. So it's more than your donation.
Let me just be a lawyer for a minute and say that, that all of that is lovely, but you really have to have something that people want. And I met with a filmmaker whose childhood best friend wrote a book, and it was turned down by 22 publishers, and she was feeling really bad. And he said, well, why don't you give me an option so that if it ever gets published and made into a movie, I've got the option to make it into a movie. And she said, okay, fine. And that was The Help. And so, believe me, once that book became a bestseller, because the 23rd publisher accepted it, he ended up becoming the director because he had that deal. So find all your creative friends and find the ones that you think have something that people will want to do. Because I'll tell you that if you have got a great script, all the great actors will want to be in it. It starts with the script. If you've got a role, a lot of times, believe me, Kevin and I sit in a lot of bad movies, and I say to myself, why is this actor in this movie? It's because there's something in that role. They get to play two characters, or they get to have a mental breakdown, or they have a really great death scene. Whatever it is, you can tell what attracted them to the role. And so you have something that they want to be in. And once you got that name attached to it, then you can get the money. So you just have to start with something people want.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, I think this is a great panel. I've totally enjoyed it. Just a comment, I'm a boomer. So growing up, my influences of women started with Mrs. Cleaver and went to her to Donna Reed. And there was a bit of an identity crisis there that I, as a growing African-American girl, had there. But then there was Diane Carroll. Then there was Pam Grier. And then as I matured, here comes Sigourney Weaver kicking aliens, you know, my favorite characters. And Linda, and I forget her name for the Terminator.
Linda Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Yeah, Hamilton. And I have seen the most amazing women in screen and in film. But I have to say, it begins at home, because I was raised by a very powerful woman who taught me my own identity. So when I go to the movies, a lot of times, to be honest, I call it brain chewing gum. I don't want to deal with reality or bosses or anything. I want something that entertains me, something that might be thought-provoking, or something that makes me say, wow, this is really amazing. And I recently went back to school. I have a web design degree, and I'm working on multimedia and visual communication because I believe there is a place for women in that area that's untapped for my 6-year-old granddaughter, my friends' children, their daughters too, because now it is open. The Bechdel, yeah, that's relevant, but I'm a hopeful person. I said the facts are the facts, yes, but let's push them out the window and then make something really happen. Let's finance the teenager. Let's go to the high school. These directors are there, and get her while she's there before she's out on the street. And let's give them something to chew on at that beginning stage. So I've had a fabulous time. I've gotten educated. Thank you very much.
That's a wonderful comment. We're the same age. I'm a boomer too. I lived through all of those same people. Julia loved that show. Earl Wagadorn Jr. was the best friend and everything. Loved that show. And I agree with you. I have to tell you that Gail Ann Hurd, who is the producer of The Terminator, spoke at an event I attended, and she said that the reason they named the movie The Terminator, she says the Terminator is not the main character in the movie. The Terminator, as you know, has 17 lines in the movie. The main character in the movie is the Linda Hamilton character, but they couldn't get any money if they named the movie after her. They had to call it The Terminator, and then they got the money.
But I think the important point of that film, and what's great, and for me in the films I'm choosing to work on as an independent producer, is that there has to be an underlying message, so that your daughter does go to the movie. The underlying message is that Linda Hamilton could overcome. And so if we're not telling stories that have this underlying message. I mean, fortunately, my sister's here, and we had a mom who the underlying message was, do it. You can do it. So no matter what, I know I can do it. And I can do it in high heels. And I'm actually happy to say I can do it in high heels, because I don't need to talk about it, but I could still do it. So I think that it's my journey to make sure that in the most powerful medium ever, that I'm telling stories and empowering women. And it doesn't have to be so obvious. If it's underlying, it goes with them and continues to be a part of the story and their story.
I think the other thing that you bring up that we haven't really touched on, but I think is important in this whole conversation, and besides the fact that having a strong mom is clearly really helpful, is this idea about media literacy. So that, listen, there are plenty of great empowering examples, and I definitely want to leave us on a hopeful note because I'm hopeful, but there also are examples that aren't so great, and that does affect a 12-year-old girl, right? She's not thinking about it as a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old. But I think the power you have as a parent, to your point, or as an aunt or as a friend or as someone who's influencing younger women in particular, is to have a critical conversation about what did you just see? And what does that mean? And how did that make you feel? And so, yeah, maybe you can't change the world and you can't change everything you see on screen, but you absolutely, I think it's a great point. You still have an impact, and you can use it as a jumping off point. In some ways, the bad stuff is even better for that, right? You can use it as a jumping off point to have a really important conversation that can have that effect.
Every one of my reviews ends with, here are the questions that you and your family should talk about. Whether it's a movie that's for adults only, for teenagers, for kids, they all end with, here are the questions to talk about after you see the movie.
Yeah.
And I think that it keeps if you stay and you keep the realization of things with your children or even yourself, because sometimes you just do want to step outside the box, go and enjoy a good movie if it's totally different from life's script. You just want to go and see something that's going to captivate you and grab you. But it's a job of the writer, but it's also the main job of the actors and the actresses that are selected for the roles to really bring and deliver the role. So that for me, is a thing with actors and actresses. You have to sell the story. It doesn't, sometimes it could be independent film, it can be a major film, but it's just selling the story. And it doesn't always have to be a headliner actor or actress that's doing it.
No, and certainly women are changing. I was able to see The Babadook at Sundance, which is a horror film, which are not typically written and directed by women, and it was genius. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. So, women are certainly crossing the genres that they haven't necessarily done over the years. So.
Definitely. And I really appreciate the point that you brought up in terms of having conversations. For me, I have a 1.5-year-old daughter. So, it really having a daughter actually just changed my worldview. I was like, wait a second. This world isn't right. But I do
Welcome to our world.
I know, right? But I do think that those are some of the conversations that I plan to have with my daughter, and especially just telling her, like, you can do anything. It doesn't matter what anyone says. So I definitely think, as you brought up, ma'am, is just the fact that we have to start these conversations at home.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. It was very insightful. My question is, oftentimes it's hard to imagine how far we've even come. So where do you see us 10 to 20 years from now? Because even in the business world, women are breaking through the glass ceiling every day. And if we look back 10 years ago, what would have been? So if you guys look forward, where are we 10 to 20 years from now?
Well, we're about to have a woman president, so that is definitely, let's give that a clap. That's definitely going to change things. What I love just about being just alive right now. When I say alive, just being aware and being here right now, and the energy is the fact that we are changing a lot of things, women. It's not about it just being an equal thing, because a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and everyone should know their place. But it's opening up the door for us to be able to have more of a say, be recognized for our gifts, opposed to, I have this gift to be a creative writer, but I'm going to go and be a baker. No. Be a creative writer. So the floor is opening up, and in about 10 years, I think we're going to be doing the daggone thing.
Yeah, and I started the evening on a very hopeful note, and I feel that we're going in that direction. I had, again, the good fortune of, I can speak to Erin's point about being chronically overcommitted in life, but it's for very important things. For example, at Sundance, as I mentioned, on the board of Women in Film and Television International, and we sponsored a breakfast, and in giving my pitch about what Women in Film does and what Women in Film does internationally and so on and so forth, fortunately, in the New York Lounge, there happened to be a owner of a small production company based in upstate New York who has written a film very specifically for his daughter, because he thought there was no good coming-of-age stories for his daughter, and he was engaged in the idea of finding a female director. So the fact that my role in all of this volunteer work means that I personally will make sure a female director gets hired for a job is the direction it's going. So it's one step at a time. That one breakfast, that one more breakfast, that one more talk that I did now means I can introduce this man to female directors who can get a job. So one day at a time, if we all are empowering and finding people jobs, then.
Last year, there were several films that had fabulous parts for women because they were written by actresses who couldn't get a good part in a movie. So you had Ruby Sparks, you had Celeste and Jesse Forever, and you had For a Good Time Call.
Britt Marling has written.
Britt Marling has written several movies. And I love to see that. I love to see the actresses taking responsibility for creating their own roles. But just as important, there have been a number of cases. Most recently, Amy Poehler saw a series on the web that I'm sure was produced on a budget of about $50. Yeah. And she liked it and turned it into a television series. So it has never been easier in that way for women who have stories that they want to tell to create them. You get out your phone and you can make a movie. You can put it online. And when my daughter isn't working on big productions with a lot of explosions in them, she's also has a chance to work on independent films where she's holding the boom when she's not sewing up somebody's costume. And those things are like a note in a bottle that can really go somewhere, because right now you can bypass the whole studio system and make your film, tell your story, and bring it to people yourself.
Well, the story is paramount. So I think if you've got a great story and Amy Poehler happens to stumble upon it, it's just a bigger and greater story. So women, write more stories.
And I feel like I'm a broken record, but I'm glad we're ending on this note about independent media, because to me that's what makes me hopeful. I really do. I think the independent media, the fact that the technology is becoming more and more sort of democratized and accessible, we're seeing things change, as you said, sort of across industries, across the board. But I think I see so much exciting stuff happening in the independent space, and I really think that's where women are going to break through.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it looks like we're out of questions for the audience, and that's okay, because we're going to... no, go ahead. I think we have time for one more.
Great.
So my question for the panel revolves around the role of the internet, and you talked about the web series. We seem to get a lot of conflicting information from the internet. You get these very empowering, oh, this woman did this fantastic thing and had this fantastic role, or they've had this project. But then you get the comment section, and you get the trolls, and you get the, oh, well, she's not pretty enough to do this, or oh, I'd totally do her, or whatever. And it seems to continuously refocus back to the superficial. So my question is, how do you see the role of the internet and those independent projects that go through the internet affecting how, do you see it mostly as a positive? Do you see it as a negative? Do you see it as a sort of, it's just evening out?
I think it's like anything. I mean, I've worked on my share of true crime, and I've sworn it off for the rest of my life, because our running joke was you'll never get married or be in another relationship because it's always the boyfriend or the husband, right? It's like, if all you watch is true crime, you think you live in a really dangerous world. So number one, I never read the comment section, ever.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a comment section.
Nothing. And
if there is, I would go delete.
I mean, I think that, for me personally, I think the internet is like any other kind of tool, right? I mean, it's a tool. And I think it's a really powerful tool. It goes back to the idea of making things more democratized and accessible and easier to create media where there were barriers before. So I think it's really exciting, but I think like any other tool, you can use it for good or you can use it for evil.
I personally think that controversy brings your ratings up, unfortunately. Linda Townsend told me about a year and a half, 2 years ago that reality TV was going to sweep the airwaves. In the Family Matters, the Cosby Shows, those types of programs. I mean, Tyler Perry is trying to bring it with the haves and have-nots and Meet the Browns and things like that. But people want to see reality. They're addicted, and, I know it's cut and, they have to edit, but it's still reality. So, negativity is going to come with, so what? I mean, that's how I feel.
don't pay any attention to it. Those people are imbeciles.
Yes.
Words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think many great things have come out of people finding them on the internet. I mean, if things are going viral, you need that, and you need that as a filmmaker to be able to quantify that you have an audience. I mean, 20 years ago, you would have to pay people to quantify who's watching and who's viewing, and now you personally could do it yourself on your Facebook page, for goodness sake. So you have to look at it as an amazingly powerful tool. Put as much information out there as you can, quantifiable data, and then you can go to Manda's question of how do I get money? I have 4,000 followers. That's how you get money. So I think it's an amazing tool, and who cares about the negative comments? Because they're not going to scroll down and read those.
And then you have to realize that people that are leaving those negative comments, those are the people that's sharing your video. They're telling everybody, oh, look at this. So, and it's
No bad publicity.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about Lena Dunham before. Lena Dunham was in college and she was posting videos on YouTube, and people said things about her body that were so vile and so appalling. She doesn't seem to mind, and she doesn't seem to be hurt by it at all. She is doing just great. She's not just an actress, she's a writer and director, and she's just doing a brilliant job.
Yeah.
Sorry, just the last thing I would say to that point is you made me think of it, Kim, when you were talking about going viral. We actually just did, and it was all pro bono, this a flash mob that was done for a Boston Marathon bombing survivor. And so we brought a whole crew together, everyone worked for free, and videotaped this flash mob that was a surprise for him. And our goal was to make it go viral. And within 24 hours, Sports Illustrated had picked it up, The Guardian in London had picked it up. I mean, to me, that was such a powerful example of the power of the internet and what you can really do.
But it derived from something that was so negative, and if that event would not have happened,
right. That was the whole point, is bringing something hopeful out of something.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing.
That's great.
Yeah, I think I also find it interesting. I feel like to a certain extent, when you do become successful or when you have a successful idea, if there aren't people that are hating, for lack of a better word, you know what I mean? That's just a part of it, right? So, you got to take in the good with the bad. But I do feel like once that starts to happen, you got to know you're onto something. When more people are telling you, like, what are you doing? That's crazy. You could never do that. No, you're probably doing what you were born to do,
That's a good point.
Well, to a certain degree, those haters fuel the lovers,
Yeah.
because then they're going to champion the cause.
Right.
So you kind of need them there to keep the other one going.
Good give and take, right? All right. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for sitting on the panel.
Thank you
Let's
for
give
having
a
me.
round of applause to the panel. So let's keep the conversation going. You can go to Picture Lock's Facebook. We'll definitely be discussing this more. We're live tweeting tonight, #Women in Cinema. But I definitely think that these are conversations that we definitely need to have until we don't have to have these conversations anymore. But thank you everyone for coming, and let's have a good evening.
Thank you.
It's sad that we live in the U.S. with all its freedoms, and we still have to have discussions like these in our recent episode on the state of Black cinema, and tonight with Women in Cinema. But we're going to continue to have these conversations here at Picture Lock, and conversations like them until it's no longer necessary. This dialogue couldn't have been possible without our esteemed panelists. I have to thank Erin Essenmacher, Kimberly Skyrme, Tia Dae, and Nell Minow for giving their time and pushing the conversation forward. You can find them respectively at KimberlySkyrmeCasting.com, ErinEssenmacher.com, at fanpage Dae on Facebook, and MovieMom.com. This show is not possible without my wonderful crew here at Picture Lock. I thank them for their hard work and helping record this labor of love. You can find Picture Lock on Facebook and Twitter. Don't forget to check out the website, picturelockshow.com, for movie reviews, news, free screenings in the DMV area, and if you're interested in being a guest on the show or a member of our studio audience. Until next time, I hope you stay locked on film.